Gentleman's time has expired. The chair will now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, we're now almost at the end of the second round of questions, and I find it necessary to amend something I said after the first round, and that is, I don't understand the core theory of this case. I thought I did, but after this round, I honestly don't understand where my colleagues are coming from. I'm probably not as good a lawyer, undoubtedly not as good a prosecutor as our chairman. Most of what we've gone over in this round, frankly, were questions that were asked to you when you testified before the House the last time, before you testified before the Senate. They were the subject of the ARB report.
Did you personally review our security situation as the previous ARB required?
But there were a few unique lines of questioning that I want to comment and ask you about. One of my colleagues spent his time asking about some of your interactions with your press people, critiquing your overall Libya strategy and something he called the Clinton Doctrine. We've been assured this committee, contrary to what Representative McCarthy said, is not about attacking you. But frankly, I don't see the relevance of any of those questions in terms of what actually happened in Benghazi, except as a means of trying to attack you or make a political statement regarding the presidential campaign. And then there was the continuing preoccupation with Sidney Blumenthal. The chairman spent both panels asking you about Sidney Blumenthal, and I have to say, I just don't understand the preoccupation with Sidney Blumenthal. You would think for the time we've spent on him that he was in Benghazi on the night manning the barricades. There is not a member on this dais that doesn't have friends they've known for a long time that send them unsolicited emails, and we're too polite to write back saying, you know, this really isn't all that helpful. There's not a member here that hasn't had that experience. So I don't know why that is so remarkable. So I honestly don't understand this fixation, but I do know one thing about Sidney Blumenthal. It's been abundantly clear here today. My 7 colleagues do not want the American people to read what he said in his deposition. And I'll tell you, it's not because of anything he said. What they really don't want the American people to see is what they asked. And it was what Ranking Member Cummings intimated, which is they've gone on national TV to say, we're not interested in the foundation, we're not interested in all these other things, we're only interested in whether we've gotten everything. But when you read that deposition, you see that is exactly what they were interested in. Now, I can't release it myself, but I can tell you Sidney Blumenthal by the numbers. So here's Sidney Blumenthal by the numbers. Republicans asked more than 160 questions about Mr. Blumenthal's relationship and communications with the Clintons, but less than 20 questions about the Benghazi attacks. Republicans asked more than 50 questions about the Clinton Foundation, but only 4 questions about security in Benghazi. Republicans asked more than 270 questions about Mr. Blumenthal's alleged business activities in Libya, but no questions about the U.S. presence in Benghazi. And Republicans asked more than 45 questions about David Brock Media Matters. I have no idea what that is even, and affiliated entities, but no questions about Ambassador Stevens and other U.S. personnel in Benghazi. That's Sidney Blumenthal by the numbers. Now, there were a couple lines of questioning that I did understand. One of them was about the Accountability Review Board report. Now, not the one actually that's relevant to today about Benghazi.
Did you personally review our security situation as the previous ARB required?
But the one that was written 17 years ago about a different attack in Tanzania. Mr. Pompeo put up a very nice chart. They've got great exhibits, selectively quoting from that report. And the implication was that the secretary should have security, should be the one deciding the security in every facility around the world.
Premises that were vulnerable and threatened, of course they came to me. I had to make the decision.
What he didn't read to you was part of the same section of that report, which says, quote, in the process, the secretary should re-examine the present organizational structure with the objective of assuring that a single high-ranking officer is accountable for all protective security matters and has the authority necessary to coordinate on the Secretary's behalf. Quite a different impression you get from reading the whole thing. we had a debate about whether we should participate in this committee, given where it was going and where it's been. Mr. Cummings said we should so we could be in the room to point out when a witness wasn't treated fairly. I have to say I think he was right, much as I held the opposite opinion. But it's important to be able to point out, if they're not going to give you the actual report or give you the time to read it, where they want to be selective to make a point. Now, I don't think that selectively quoting that 17-year-old ARB sheds much light on what happened in Benghazi, but it is a nice way to attack you. I also want to talk a bit about something that I spent a lot of time on as the ranking on Intel and as a member of the investigation that the Intelligence Committee did. That was a Republican-led investigation. Two of my colleagues here are on the same committee, went through the same investigation. And my colleagues have intimated that, that there was an effort to spin what happened. And they have neglected to point out, as you might imagine and as you well know, that the intelligence we got after attack like this in the fog of war, initially you believe one thing, and then you get more information, you understand something better, and then you get more and you understand still something better. And we were briefed by the director of the CIA at the time.
I didn't do it.
I wish he were here today. And our understanding kept evolving. And in the beginning, we got it wrong. And I've looked through that, and in that initial intelligence, within a few hours, there were some reports indicating it was a direct attack, as you told the Egyptian Prime Minister at the time. That was what was understood in the immediate hours. Within 24 hours, though, we had intelligence, both open source and signals intelligence, that there was a protest, that the protest was hijacked, and that it became an attack. And your statements were indicative and reflective of what we knew then. It wasn't until about a week or 10 days later, when we actually got the videos from the compound, that we learned definitively there was no protest. Well, that simple chronology sheds a lot of light on why you and Ambassador Rice said what you did at the time. Not a member here has shown anything you've said or the ambassador said that was at all inconsistent with what our intelligence agencies told us exactly at the time.
I didn't do it.
It may come of interest to some of my colleagues who are not on intelligence to know that there are still a great many people in the intelligence community that believe the video was part of the motivation of some who attacked us on that night. I wish, frankly, we spent more time giving you an accurate representation of the documents and the reports and the facts instead of making an effort to demagogue on this. I find it fascinating, frankly, that my colleagues put so much reliance on the 17-year-old Accountability Review Board report, but they place no weight in the one actually about Benghazi. Thomas Pickering has 40 years of experience. There's probably no one in the diplomatic corps more respected. Admiral Mullen, the other co-chair, chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, someone the Republicans and Democrats both respected tremendously. Are we now to believe that they are a bunch of rubes, that they had the wool pulled over their eyes, or they were corrupt or incompetent? Why is their report of so little value?
After more than 100 witness interviews, including more than 80 with witnesses no other committee of Congress talked to, with witnesses no other committee of Congress talked to, with witnesses no other committee of Congress talked to.
It's hard for me to escape the conclusion that the one centric fact of them all is that you are running for president and with high poll numbers, and that's why we're here. And I say all this because I never want to see this happen again. I don't want 4 years from now or 8 years from now or 12 years from now in another presidential election for us to be in here or for one side or the other. I don't want the Republicans to say, let's do Benghazi again. That really worked. Or the Democrats to say, they did it to us, let's do it to them. And I think, frankly, by only pointing these things out, that's the only way we're going to avoid having this happen again. Well, let me just ask you on that 17-year-old ARB, and in light of Mr. Morrell, who came in and talked to us, not about the security at the diplomatic facility, but at the CIA annex. His testimony was all of the improvements to security at the Benghazi base, the idea to conduct an assessment, the assessment itself, the implementation of its recommendations were all done without the knowledge and direction of the director and I. It happened exactly where it should have happened, which is in that security office. So same view on the CIA's part. Of course, they're not here. But would you like to comment on what the full recommendation of the Tanzania ARB was and the very similar process used in our intelligence agencies?
Thank you very much, Congressman Schiff. And I think you make an excellent point. I'm aware of Deputy Director Morell's testimony. It's very similar to what I have said here. It's very similar to what I believe General Petraeus would have said had he come before you.
After more than 100 witness interviews, including more than 80 with witnesses no other committee of Congress talked to,
that the issues about security, whether we're talking State Department or we're talking CIA or any other agency, are not made at the level of secretary, director. Premises that were vulnerable and threatened, of course they came to me. I had to make the decision. It is made at the appropriate level of the security professionals.
I didn't do it.
And I think what Mike Morell told you in the Intelligence Committee investigation, you would hear from anyone in the government at a high level who has to deploy Americans around the world. We see that with the Defense Department. You know, we see breaches of security on our military bases, and we know that everybody is struggling to get it right. And as I have said, in the vast majority of cases, our security professionals do.
I didn't do it.
And then, unfortunately, there are instances where they do not. And that's why we have after-action reports, or why we have the Accountability Review Board to look at what happened and try to learn from it. And going all the way back to Tehran and Beirut and East Africa and the 100 attacks on facilities around the world since 2001, we have tried to learn and apply those lessons, and will, I hope, continue doing so.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I yield back.
Premises that were vulnerable and threatened, of course they came to me. I had to make the decision.
You were able to find $20 million to support increased security forces in Libya, yet we weren't able to find money to support your own people on the ground.